Hey, it's Sam, and it's March 2024 already. You see, we have a list of important transits here that I'm going to be going over. We have some major shifts, planets moving into Pisces, others moving into Aquarius. We also have the first eclipse of 2024. That's a lunar eclipse happening at the end of March, and Mercury Rahu conjunction, Venus Saturn, a lot ahead. Please like the video. Clicking like helps a lot more than you know. It pushes the video higher in relevant video searches. Also, please leave a nice comment. Comments also help more than you know as it raises the video in searches. Many times with hundreds of likes, there are only a dozen comments and they can be disproportionately negative. So be positive. Let me know if you like this. Even just a few words really helps. So subscribe, ring the bell to get notified of upcoming videos. So yeah, let's get going. First, I want to thank my friend and colleague, Casey Scott, for putting together this 2024 calendar. You can see him at Gold Star Astrology, especially on Instagram. I know he does a lot of work there. So you can see here on this calendar, we're just going to go right through and tick through all of these shifts. First, Mercury moves into Pisces from Aquarius, where he is now, and Venus also moves into Aquarius from Capricorn. So again, this dual shift happens on March 6th. So Mercury is moving into a place where he's pretty powerful, and he has been for all of this year in those two Saturn-ruled signs. Then he moves into Pisces, where he's in his debilitated sign. So this is kind of leading to a confusing story, right? This is what Mercury is about, getting that story straight. So now for the next several months, Mercury's either going to be in Pisces or Aries. He's going to go retrograde in Aries, back into Pisces, then through Aries again. So Mercury is now entering this cycle of about four or 5 months where he's going to either be in his debilitated sign of Pisces or in a sign that's sort of triggering and too fast and not very thoughtful, which is Aries. So again, this is also a Gandanta point where energy sort of gets unloosened, right? So understand this, that communication for the next few months, which is what Mercury's about, and particularly getting the story straight so we can explain it straight. Things are confusing, and people have a hard time communicating when they're not thinking clearly, when they don't get the story straight. Like, you can understand what I'm saying right now because I have these details straight and then I'm saying them. If I was like, oh, it's going to be amazing and it'll be this, and I'm not focusing on details, I'm just giving generic, general, amorphous attributes, you don't know what that means. So you understand it when I say specific things. That specificity comes from Mercury, and in Pisces it gets kind of blurry. So notice that in yourself, notice that in others. This is a big shift. Mercury leaving Aquarius. Again, in the Saturn signs, Capricorn and Aquarius, Mercury is very down to earth because Saturn is. Saturn takes those details seriously. And in Pisces, it's like, oh, well, it could be this, it could be that. And then in Aries, it's too sharp, too opinionated. It kind of goes both extremes here. So this is one of the least favorable places for Mercury in the zodiac, by the way, is this place between Pisces and Aries, and then also between Cancer and Leo. Those two Gandanta points, particularly. So this is, and because there's going to be a retrograde cycle in here as well, this really draws it out for several months. So then, again, Venus is also moving into Aquarius. It's been in Capricorn. They're both Saturn-ruled signs, but Venus is most notably going to get close to Saturn, and you can see on March 21st, Venus will be moving into an exact conjunction with Saturn. But again, Venus getting closer to Saturn means that we're going to have an opportunity to get more serious and more down to earth and more practical about our agreements. Now that's both relationship agreements, but also work agreements, and all of the situations where we are in a give and take. We feel appreciated and respected, so that then we will appreciate and respect another person, but then sometimes we don't, so we get offended, and then we withdraw our affection or our willingness to engage, and all. This is the Venus sort of currency that we exchange with Venus. So it's more of a neutral move from Capricorn to Aquarius because they're both ruled by Saturn, but Aquarius is more social. So it's actually a good move here because it means that we'll be less personally involved and, jacked up on our own desires around our partnerships and engagements, and we'll be more apt to want to share around themes that are like the bigger picture, right? That's what Aquarius is. So these are a couple big shifts that start at the beginning of March. Then you see we get down to this new moon in Aquarius. It's at the end of Aquarius. Now, with the lunations coming, with the full moons coming before the new moons, it's kind of like we've already been in a strong Aquarius cycle because the full moon happened in Leo a couple weeks earlier, right? So it's like an anticipation of this Aquarius energy. So we've already been in more of a humanitarian focus because the sun was in Aquarius, but we had the full moon in Leo before we had the new moon. So this just really formalizes that possibility of being more selfless, being more universalized in your approach. Because again, the full moon in Leo started 2 weeks before this new moon. So that full moon in Leo was where we felt this emotional exhilaration or this like emotional importance, let's say, and power. But then that wanes because after that the moon wanes and then that starts to disappear. So we're feeling less and less about, oh yeah, my feelings and my identity is the most important thing there is. And then that wanes until we get to the Aquarius new moon, which we're having now. And by the way, this is also Shivaratri is right before this, Mahashivaratri. I'll do another video about that. But this new moon in Aquarius is really where we start or where we get immersed in that fire of unity and unity consciousness around being this universalized being. And then shortly thereafter, the sun goes into Pisces. So you see this is only 4 days later. The sun will go into Pisces for 30 days. The sun moving into Pisces is that sun in that place of transcendent awareness, transcendent power. And that's, again, also very important because Pisces is where we are not even part of this world of culture and community and humanity, but where we leave and where we transcend and, dissolve into the oneness of everything, so to speak. And that sun moving into Pisces is also big in showing the next eclipse, which is right around the corner. The next new moon is the eclipse. Now, again, this is also part of 2024, the cycle of 2024. And, I've done a lot of work on the 2024 and the 11 most important shifts that can help you. You can see here that I have a class that you could get. And again, it's very impactful because now we're only down here in this where we've just finished this Mars exalted cycle. By the time we get here, you can see Mars moves into Aquarius on March 15th. That means we're only here on this calendar. So you want to avail yourself of that 2024 Vedic Astrology and the most important shifts. You can see 2024vedicastrology.com has that. Make sure to get the 2024 Vedic Astrology Forecast. It's a free download. Just click the link, 2024vedicastrology.com, then give your name and email. Click yes, I want this now. Then you'll be able to register for the free video cast that's about an hour long. You just pick a time to schedule that. Then you go and check your email address. As you can see, it's sent 2024 forecast download. You click here to download the 2024 PDF. You see it looks really cool there. All 11 of the most important shifts. But then you can also get it for your sign where I evaluate these 11 most important shifts for your sign so you can stay connected all year. Don't drop out. Stay engaged all year. So yeah, we have the upcoming eclipse and a big shift of Jupiter moving into Taurus. I talk about that for your sign in that free web class. Then Saturn retrograde, Mercury goes retrograde in Leo, this Cancer Leo. Then the solar eclipse in Virgo later in the year in October. Then we have, more things. So a lot ahead for you. And you want to be tracking that. So again, as I say, the next big shift, March 15th, is Mars goes into Aquarius. He's been exalted in Capricorn, goes into Aquarius. A bit of a denigration there because, again, he's exalted in Capricorn because he's ruled by Saturn, but it's also Saturn in a very earthy, practical way. Mars in these air signs can be quite fussy and arguing over ideas and crusading and public fighting, and we might see a lot of that on the world stage, particularly with political battles and things like that heating up. Aquarius is very much about that sort of thing, so we may see a lot of that in the public, but in your life, be careful about turning enemies into, or you should try to be turning enemies into allies, trying to develop consensus for the bigger picture, not just you winning against the crowd, but trying to move the issues forward, and trying to be more cooperative in the public and whatnot. But that's the nature of Mars in Aquarius starting March 15th. And then we have Mercury Rahu conjunction on the 18th of March, and as it says here, eclipse season begins. Definitely with Mercury hitting that node, it's going to really fire off. Now the planets are going to be moving into the eclipse with the sun in the same sign as well. So again, this Mercury Rahu will be a debilitated Mercury with Rahu in Pisces. So again, this has all those hallmarks of that debilitated Mercury energy that I talked about, where we're not really getting the story straight. So be aware of that potential to be confused, to confabulate. And again, notice on the world stage, this is also why I talk about world events. Sometimes people obsess over if I'll mention that a particular politician did this or did that. They think I'm doing it because I want to talk about politics. I don't. All of them are. I don't like even really talking about it mostly because people lose the point. And this is also a good lesson in the debilitated Mercury. Like, maybe you don't agree with a particular view, but it's still illustrating the lesson here. So you'll see the rhetoric start to get very confusing and very contorted around this eclipse, because Mercury's going to go retrograde on the around the eclipse, or during the eclipse time. By the way, that's not unusual. That's why I didn't even make that big deal about it, because Mercury's retrograde quite a lot around eclipses. But with this one for sure, it's also going to happen because it's in its debilitated sign. That's what makes it unique as well. So a lot of confabulated Mercury energy heating up as we get into this part of March and into April. So then we have this Venus-Saturn conjunction that I talked about, Thursday, March 21st. Saturn-Mars will be exact, right? So again, you can look at these things. This is where it is on the calendar. But, when we get to the 18th, 19th, 20, 21, 22, this really 3-4 days before and after is when we really feel it. And often it's as it's approaching. So as Venus is approaching this conjunction, so from 18, 19, 20, 21, we're going to really start to feel the pressure of this Venus-Saturn conjunction, which is, again, to really concentrate and focus the energy. And often Saturn doesn't feel good to us because we live in a lot of flowery illusions about ourselves. We're so quick to recognize how everybody was mean to us and how, you're right, that relationship, I wasn't appreciated. They were mean. They were narcissists. They were this. They were that, blah, blah, blah. Well, what about you? What were you? You were a perfect, innocent being? No. And so what happens when Venus gets close to Saturn, or anything gets close to Saturn, is all of that rhetoric that we tell ourselves doesn't really matter anymore, because Saturn just shows the results of the consequences, which ultimately means, yeah, aside from what you tell yourself, you're still alone. You're still the same person you were. You haven't really grown an inch. Now, again, that's not true. So we have to be careful not to get depressed about these things. But Saturn brings the realism, and the realism is also, or often, in the form of being alone. Saturn brings solitude, isolation. Now, again, it's like, yeah, alone, isolation, solitude. There's nothing wrong with that. It's actually once you know yourself, you will love solitude, and you won't give it away easily. You'll be alone because you choose to be alone. I went out with some friends last night, and the question was, so anything new? Anything new? What's up? Anything new? It was a funny question because I was like, actually, no, there's nothing new, but that's by choice. Because usually something new might be because often anything new is anyone new in your life, any new drama, and it's actually no. And it's not boring. It's fine. It's by choice that by the way, there's plenty that's new, but I mean on the level of any exciting new drama going on, no, actually, it might look boring to the outside. It's not boring to me. It's called peace. Because I would rather be alone than have something new that's confusing. Anyway, this is how Venus-Saturn can be a great benefit though as well, because Saturn really brings the truth to Venus, which is that it's not so bad being alone. I appreciate that I'm not being tormented or something like that. I appreciate that there's not bad agreements that I'm in. It's better to have no agreement than a bad agreement that's going to bring resentment and etc. So, but it feels the way it feels. So notice how it feels when you get 18, 19, 20, 21, and then the lingering effects afterward, right? So this is a huge shift as Venus gets close to Saturn. You'll start to notice how generous you are. How generous of spirit you are. You want everyone to be generous of spirit toward you and be kind and forgiving of all of the things you do. Are you as kind and forgiving of all the things they do? Just asking. Because if you are, then this won't be as punishing to you. If you're not, again, Saturn doesn't play that BS. We can BS ourselves, and then then it interacts with Saturn, or Saturn aspects it, and we see the truth of those fairy tales. Because honestly, what happens if it is, let's say, around a relationship, when Venus gets close to Saturn, you'll be missing that person. And you'll be realizing, wow, you know what? I really miss that person. And if that person was authentically someone torturing you and tormenting you, you wouldn't be missing them. So you'll start to realize, wow, you know what? That person really did try. Wow, you know what? That really was me. I really didn't show up the way I wish I would have. That's the reality, right? So this is why Saturn is a reality check around all of the planets. And that's why we often don't like it, because we're not living in accordance with reality. We're living in our fantasies. So again, Venus in these Saturn signs in general is quite good because they're not fantasy-based signs. And Venus is better in a grounded sense, not in a fantasy sense, right? So big focal point here in this Venus-Saturn conjunction. And then the lunar eclipse in Virgo, this is really when the eclipse season officially starts because it's the first eclipse. And I'll do a whole thing on this, obviously. But this lunar eclipse in Virgo, in Hasta Nakshatra, in Virgo, very important. And you see, this is also the day that Mercury changes signs and goes into Aries. So this is a big pivotal day, this lunar eclipse in Virgo, and Mercury going into Aries, you can see. And then Mercury turns retrograde at some point here as well. But this big shift wherever the sign of Virgo is, it will be huge. I'm also doing a lot of readings based on this eclipse cycle, and also you can get a nodal axis report that I've done. The eclipse season is really heating up, and I taught a free web class on this Rahu and Pisces K2 and Virgo shift for you and your world. You want to check this out. As it says here, what does it mean for your sign and the house axis for you? Because this is going to affect you differently wherever Pisces and Virgo are. For the world, based on the past transits, are you ready? What will happen? What's going to happen next? It's very easy. You just click register now. You can select your event date and time. You can watch an instant replay or select a date and time to watch it. Enter your name and email address. As you can see, these are screenshots from the class. Even when I talked about the past history, I even mentioned when King Charles and Camilla were married. I mentioned when the Pope died. I mentioned a lot of things that you've heard me discuss recently. So again, this is a rare opportunity to sit back for an hour and understand how this nodal axis shift and these upcoming eclipses will affect you. So go ahead and check that out. It's free and a great opportunity for you to really check out this eclipse cycle. And finally, Venus is in Pisces at the end of March. You see March 31st. Venus goes into Pisces. Now again, this is where Venus is exalted, but it can also be a bit ungrounded. But after having gone through those Saturn signs and down to Earth, and especially hitting Saturn, where Saturn strips away all of that artificial, flowery, I deserve everything, I'm the goddess, I deserve everything. Again, that's very unevolved Venus energy. I'm entitled to more, I'm always the one who is blah. This is immature, because the other side of that is, pay attention to how special I am. Flatter me. Flattery, vanity. I deserve everything, even though, all I do for you. This kind of, again, it goes through those Saturn signs, and again, the reality comes out. And I'm not trying to mock people, but what happens is we have these ideas in our head, and then against the light of day, against the rocky shore of reality, which is kind of what Saturn is, there's a feeling that comes up, and we're like, wow, that person actually really was sweet and special, and here I am all alone, and all that person did is wanted to be with me, but I was too hard to please or something, or whatever it might be. Or I'm just locked in my little efficient world. Like if someone spends too much time alone, then they'll notice this, because I also talk about being alone, right? If it's too much time alone, then that Venus getting close to Saturn will also show that. Right? Because, oh yeah, I don't want to give or I don't want to share. So those things also come. All of it does. But after that sort of reality check of Venus going through the Saturn signs, then it can be liberated. It liberates that quality of Venus in Pisces. And this is where we find happiness in all things, beauty in all things. And then we become grateful for the fact that people can see the beauty in us. And we become grateful for the beauty in them. And in all things, it becomes less personal and less possessive. The real downfall of Venus energy is possessiveness. Possessing someone else's attention, capturing it, holding it, keeping it. It's mine. Your appreciation belongs to me. Give it to me all the time. Again, doesn't mean we're supposed to be unappreciated. No reason to read that into it. But we have to calibrate this correctly, and it's often a very tricky thing with Venus. So the end of the month, Venus in Pisces will also be a nice shift for the next several weeks. Very good for creativity, all kinds of beauty, and especially devotional practices and whatnot. Coming after this, or coming right before this solar eclipse in Pisces, which happens on April 8th. So that's the month of March 2024, and I hope you have a great one. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel.